Hey, how's it going? Vaping MacGyver here. We're going to, that was a very enthusiastic start. Hey, we're going to have a look at the Aegis X, the new mod from Geekvape. Got the old Legend here, we're going to compare it to. What we're going to do is we're going to get right inside it and just have a look how it's built inside. I'm interested to see how well they've done the waterproofing, dust protection, all that sort of stuff in there. And also there's a few little issues with the Legend. I think in the design we have seen a few of them fail actually. Like they're tough, they'll take an impact, but that doesn't help you if there's an issue with how it's put together. And if you have a look in the top assembly here on the Legend, it's really complicated. So there's I think there's been a few issues with the way this assembly has maybe come apart and had connection problems. I've seen a few no atomizer issues. What else? Battery balance issues. One battery showing full, the other showing empty. That might be related to this really long. This is a battery sense wire, so it connects to the series in between the two batteries, and that gives the board a reference voltage for. Actually allows it to tell the individual voltage levels of the batteries. Really important for balance charging and for giving you a dual battery display and cutting off, giving you a low battery warning or cutting off the firing when a single battery is too low. So that wire there is really long and it goes right through the case, and it's kind of up against metal there. It actually goes all the way down to that pin there, which touches on the battery door, and it's, yeah, I don't know, I think it's just not great the way that's set up. Mine was pinched, not this one. The other one I used regularly was actually a little bit pinched in assembly. So yeah, a couple of little issues with the Legend, but yeah, widely known as being a really tough mod. So here's the new X, and we want to see what's inside and how it's been put together and how it compares to the Legend. There's the board from the Legend. So we'll have a little look. Obviously the screen is way bigger compared to the little baby screen on the Legend, and the huge El Hugo screen of the X. I have been using this for the last week, and it's been pretty good so far. It performs pretty well, does everything you would expect. I know a lot of you guys don't charge with USB. I do. I really like it because it's convenient, and I don't have to take the batteries out, and I don't have to mess up my wraps. And there's just benefits, and I'm lazy. And yeah, people say you shouldn't use your mod, you shouldn't fire it while it's plugged into charge. It's not a big deal, in my opinion, because the charging circuit has to be current controlled. It has to be current limited. It can't just give any current to the battery. It's got to be limited. It's got to be set. So when you fire it, if it's going to continue to charge while you're firing it, the current's already limited anyway, so it's not going to overload the charging circuit. The other thing some mods do is they'll actually pause charging during when you fire the mod anyway, so it's just not a real big deal. And lithium batteries don't really care too much about charging and then discharging. For my usage, when I get home and it's getting down to sort of 1 bar left, I do like to plug it in, get some charge back into it, and vape on it at the same time. I think that's really convenient, and I don't think there's any technical reason why I shouldn't do it. But as far as like daily usage, normal usage, setting wattage, it all feels normal. It all performs well, and just as I would expect. And I think it feels a lot better in the pocket than the Legend. I think because of these edges, they're sort of beveled over on the X rather than the Legend having these kind of pointier edges here, so it kind of goes into your pocket easier. It feels smaller in the hand. I could have sworn it was a smaller mod until I compared them and realized they're actually pretty much exactly the same. For some reason, like an illusion that it does feel smaller in the hand, it feels a lot lighter even though there's only about 10 grams difference between them. Yeah, so I think that's due to the shape and design, which is good. I like it. Okay, first thing we're having a look at here is the outside trim. I was worried this was plastic, like that metallized, yeah, just a metallized coating on a plastic, but it's not. That's definitely metal for sure. I'll give it a little tap, the spanner there. Let's have a look how scratch resistant this is. Because I'm kind of wondering if after a bit of use this is going to get really scratched and just look crap. So let's give it a good scratch up. Yeah, I mean, nothing's going to stand up to hitting it with a pair of pliers. But, yeah, it does come off. Like, it's fairly strong. Yeah, it will come off. With use in your pocket and daily use, that's going to come off eventually, so it's going to start looking a bit crap. But you can take that off really easily, and you could paint it. Yeah, really easy. I might put a powder coat finish on that. I reckon that'd be the way to go. Anyway, next thing, let's get it apart. Now it looks like a pretty similar setup to the Legend, where you've got a top plate there that's probably sealed with the same kind of white silicon, I'd say. And I just checked this before, and they're T6 screws. It is Friday night here, by the way. Well, actually, a lie. It's Thursday night, but it's my Friday night because I got tomorrow off. Hence the reason why I wanted to do a dismantle and have a cold beer. That is really not a good. That's not a good beer. That's a Crown Lager. That's Australian. It just tastes like a crappy homebrew. But it was free, so it was the right price. Okay, screws out from the top panel. Let's say I'm going to need a flat screwdriver here. Yeah, so it's going to be the same as the Legend, where there's a little lip there. It's covered in rubber. But if you get in between it, that's pretty nasty to do to a new mod, but I'm doing it so you guys don't have to. Okay, top plate lifting up. Yep, so pretty well, very similar to the Legend. That was that noise, is the battery stickers peeling off. I remember that exactly what the Legend has. Okay. Yep, very similar top plate. Very similar, actually. See even that same little gold tag there. Yep, so they're pretty much slightly different there and there. They pretty much just recycled that design. Slightly different. Looks like this little outer piece of plastic fits inside that piece, whereas this is sort of just sitting on the outside. And you can see just with the spring tension of the contacts there, it's pushing that, it's bending that plastic out, which is not great. Sort of shouldn't do that. That seems a little bit better. It's sort of recessed, but it's a very similar design, and it's really busy. There's your negative to case, negative to the contact, positive on the red wire, and then you've got 510 positive is going off there to the board. So you've got a lot of stuff going on there. You've got both battery connections and the 510 connection, and a common ground for the 510, and the board output and the batteries in one. So there is a fair bit of stuff going on there. It has got faster charging than the Legend. The Legend is around about 1 amp. I haven't tested this one yet, but they do quote 2 amp. Okay, that actually wasn't that hard. Yeah, okay, it's just adhesive. Just adhesive holding that outer case on, and I haven't stuffed it too bad, so that should go back on. Buttons are going to fall straight out. Okay, so metal buttons, again, like the Legend, which is nice. Front plate very similar to what we would have seen on the Legend. I can't show you here because it's missing, but yeah, that would have been the clear front plate that you could see the screen through, and has the little membranes for the buttons. Obviously, so they're flexible. You can push the button underneath, but it maintains a seal. It stops anything getting into it. Same white silicon we got sealing around there, just the same as the Legend, which I think they have an automated system there to actually apply a bead of white silicon before they put that front panel on, which is a nice process. I mean, a nice process to have it automated, because it would be just a pain to do manually. You'd get it everywhere and it'd be really inconsistent. So good to see. It's actually, I don't know if you can see that. There's a couple of little air bubbles in the plastic there, and there. It doesn't really matter. Just Yeah, kind of interesting to see. Just little trapped air bubbles. Okay, there's the board. Little clear front panel. Yeah, interesting looking board. Yeah, quite different. Yep, completely different to the Legend. Some similar components, like the buttons, they just seems like the same button manufacturer just supplies every single small device company. So they're always pretty similar. Looks like we've got one big inductor there. It's on the front side this time. Well, I guess there's no screen there, so they can put it on the front. Pretty nicely finished. Nice gold screws there, holding it to the frame. Of course, the gold screws would actually be grounding, because in the top plate, the batteries there ground onto this top plate there, and so does the 510. So there's no actual separate wire going back to the board. There's no negative wire coming from the 510 or from the batteries. So it just goes onto the case, because you can see there's only that blue wire is the 510. Hard to see. Blue wire is the 510 positive. The red wire is the battery series positive. Hard to see down in there. Can just see it. And the ground is going through the case, through these screws, onto the ground plane of the board, and also ground onto the 510. Which is good. Like, it saves a wire, so I quite like it, and it saves another connection method, another sort of termination method where you've got to have someone, you know, solder a wire on, because you can see what they've had to do to get this wire in. That's a bit of a bastard to solder right in there. Pretty clean considering, but it would be silicon, so you wouldn't burn the jacket. But they've nicked it there. So you can see that they've taken a whole chunk of insulator out, jacket off the wire. It's actually pretty, it's pretty well soldered considering, although what they would have done is probably solder that. That's why it's longer, because they would have soldered that with this apart so they could actually get access to it, and then squished it all together when they put this piece onto the top plate, that assembly, which has got some screws in it holding it all together. But yeah, it has been pinched there. It looks like it could have happened when it went together. Yeah, might have just taken an edge off. It is ground anyway, so it doesn't matter actually. If that shorts against the case, it doesn't matter. It's only actually going to make the ground even better. So we've got, yeah, same setup with a little stickers there for the battery polarity, and the tubes inside, those little plastic tubes, to prevent the batteries from shorting against the case, just in case you had a torn wrap or a damaged wrap, because the whole case body, most mods actually the case body is negative, but in this case you can't. Well, they're really tight fitting, but because of those plastic sleeves, they can't short out, which is good, because you know, when's the last time you looked at your wraps? Look at my tape's looking terrible, but the wraps are okay. Good idea to really check your wraps. You've got to do it. Like, it's super important, but you know, you never know when you have nicked it and actually not seen it, or inspected the batteries and not seen it, and seen some damage in there. So it's good to have that extra bit there instead of just bare metal. That's the screen connector there. I wonder if it's like an iPhone. Yeah, it's like a little iPhone flip style connector, little press-in connector. See if we can identify some components. I do want to look at the microcontroller on this board and see if it's see what brand it is, whether it's like a no-name, like on the Legend board, or a Nuvoton, I don't know how to pronounce that, branded microcontroller, which seems to do a better job at TC, like the Aegis Mini and Nova both do quite a good job on TC, and the Legend's pretty crappy on TC, because I reckon it's because it's a different microcontroller and it's not able to read the coils accurately. I mean, or it doesn't have a little amplifier for the shunt, but anyway, that's a different thing. Got the board hinged out here. It screws out, obviously. Now they have changed the battery monitoring wire, so it's a lot shorter now. It goes just from this pin, just sneaks up around the side there, and goes straight onto the board there, instead of going all the way through the device from the bottom right up to the top and looping around like in the Legend. So whether that's good, I like that. And it has got an extra little bit of heat shrink, a little bit of protection there. The board itself, it looks pretty clean, looks pretty good. It's not conformally coated, so it hasn't got any extra coating on top. That shouldn't matter too much since the device is all internally sealed anyway. It does appear to have the no-name microcontroller, like in the Legend, which means it probably doesn't have good TC, but I'm working on a rig that can test that properly, and we'll compare it to the other Geekvape mods like the Nova and the Aegis Mini that do have good TC, and we'll just see how it compares. There's not too much else to really tell you. It's a fairly standard looking regulated dual cell board. On this side, a bit hard to see because I haven't got it completely out because I haven't desoldered anything. Bunch of MOSFETs on this side. There for the voltage converter. So what do we got? Looks like 5 MOSFETs, probably 4 for the actual conversion, maybe 1 for reverse polarity or something like that. Those guys there are inductors. They're normally used for a buck or boost converter. One probably for charging, one probably for supplying the rest of the voltage rails needed for the microcontroller and the screen. So you can see that the inductors, plural, are bigger on, mainly one is bigger than the Legend. So that'll be your difference between 1 amp, see it's probably that guy down there for the charging, 1 amp charging versus 2 amp charging. Now as far as the screen goes, I did have a question about how durable the mod is going to be overall because of this big screen, and I think it'll be okay. I don't think it'll make much of a difference, just because the screen is actually, again, it's hard to see probably because of my camera angles. That looks like a solid side there. So underneath the screen, the case is a solid plate there, and the screen's up against it, and then you've got the plastic over the top. So it's kind of sandwiched there. So it's quite firm and well protected. And then they just sneak that little connector out, the little gap in that plate. So I don't think there's any reason why that would be much less durable. I know these little connectors are pretty good at staying on, like iPhones get dropped. I mean, mine does a lot, and I've never had one of these be a problem. It's all pretty strong in there, pretty well held in place. So I don't think it's going to be an issue, really. I'm not going to take this plastic off just because all we'd see is just the LCD sitting there on top of the metal. There's not a great deal to see. It looks pretty thick, is a good thing. Looks probably 2 millimeters thick, I'd say. And I know on the Legend the front plate was quite thick as well, that front plastic. And like, it has got some scratches on it already, but see if you can kind of make that out. But sort of less than what I'd expect from how I've used it so far, because I've been pretty rough with it. I'm in a workshop, so I'm kind of inside and outside, and in the car, and riding bikes, and I'll just kind of throw it on the workshop bench, and then I'll put it in my pocket, and then I'll be outside, and then I just kind of take it everywhere, and I'm not gentle with devices. Yeah, I think that's actually not bad, really, for how I've treated it and to how many scratches I've got on it. I think looks like a fairly durable plastic, and it's pretty thick. So I think you'd have to really give it a good hit to try and crack that plastic. I don't think you will, or at that point you'd probably hit it so hard that can any mod be expected to survive? I don't think that's going to be an issue, honestly. Like, about that. That was a couple of good hits. Left a couple of little scratches, but yeah, I gave that a pretty good hit with the back of the screwdriver. Yep, it's pretty solid. Now, test will be, does the screen still work? Does the LCD actually still work? Yeah, I reckon it will. Yeah, left just a couple little scratches just there, but obviously didn't crack. Pretty happy with that. I will put it back together and make sure that LCD still works, and that's probably about it for this video. I will do another video for doing some testing. I'll test the wattage, I'll test the charge rate, I'll test if it balances properly. Interesting feature they've got, Geekvape calls it an innovative balance charging system, and I think that's the ABB setting in the menu, which is a bit obscure, and they don't really explain it in the manual at all. A guy on Reddit did let me know that is a passive balancing system, which it's just a bit weird, like why you'd need it, I don't know. But what it should do, by theory, is balance two batteries. Say you've grabbed two batteries. You shouldn't be just grabbing random batteries, but okay, let's say you've got a pair, they're a married pair, but for some reason one's higher than the other in charge level, current charge level. You put them in the mod, and the circuit inside, without being plugged into power or anything, will actually start to equalize those batteries by a passive balancing system. It's a bit pointless, it seems to me, because if you're charging externally, they're just going to be balanced next time you put them in the charger anyway. If it's got balanced charging on the USB charge circuit, then you plug it in, charge it, it'll balance it on the next cycle or two anyway as well. So yeah, I don't know why you'd need that. And also, I have had it turned on, and my battery level meters have been 1 bar off anyway. So we'll get in there, we'll have a look what it's doing. I think I should be able to see if it's doing anything. I should be able to see a current coming out of or into this balancing tap to be either charging or discharging, probably discharging one cell. Should be able to actually see it doing something through that wire, which it would have to change the levels of charge levels of the batteries separately. So we'll see if it's doing that at all. What else will we do? Yeah, wattage check, see if it's measuring resistance properly. We'll see how low it drains the batteries down to. Oh, and with the Legend, this is why I've got this one apart and why I've got two Legends, is there was a big issue with the battery life on these. So the battery life wasn't great when these first came out, and a lot of people were complaining. Well, everyone wanted to buy one because it was the first really strong, durable mod, waterproof and all the rest of it. But the battery life was crap. Well, everyone was reporting it to be crap. So I got two of these and tested why. And what was happening is the mod was staying in standby mode for a long time, for 10 minutes. So after the last time you pressed a button, it would sit there in standby mode. It would still be active standby mode. And it didn't go into deep sleep mode until 10 minutes later. And while it was in that active standby, it was using a fair bit of current, relatively speaking, like still small, but if it's sitting there using that for 10 minutes, it did add up over a day. Especially if you're grabbing your mod and you're having a puff every sort of 10-20 minutes, the board's basically never going to full standby mode. Full sleep, deep sleep, whatever you'd want to call it. It's where the microcontroller shuts down, and it's really not doing anything. It's on full power saving mode, and it's drawing very low, like in the microamps range. So, theoretically, you'd be years before it actually discharged your batteries at that level. But in active standby mode, I think it was pulsing at over 100 milliamps, which is not much compared to how much power you're drawing to fire the coil, but it definitely adds up over a day. The other thing it was doing was the battery level meter was way off, so it would get down to 0 bars and make you think your batteries are dead, and it still had plenty of life left. It was still like 3.5 volts or something like that on the cell, still like probably at least 20 or 30% left. And it was showing it dead empty. You could keep using it until it was properly empty, but you're seeing the battery level meters at nothing, and of course you're going to take your batteries out and charge them and think your mod's dead, even though it had like quite a lot of life left. So after I did that test, Geekvape released a firmware update for the Legend, and it recalibrated the battery level meters, and it got rid of the standby time. It dropped it right down to about 3 minutes, I think, which was good. And that pretty much sorted. Actually, I think they dropped the cutoff level a little bit. I think it went from, oh my god, off the top of my head, 3.15 down to 3.1 or something like that. Dropped the level a little bit, so pulled a little bit more power out of your cells before completely cutting off and saying dead battery. So the update did help. Now I want to see if they've learnt their lesson and kept the same firmware, the same behavior for those points for the X. I've got a Geekvape blade as well, which is the dual 21700, and it's got all the same problems as the Legend before the software update, firmware update I mean. So yeah, like I don't know, there's no update for the blade, so I don't know if they just didn't bother, or I don't know which one was first, whether the blade was out before the Legend. I think the Legend was first and then the blade, so yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It could go either way, whether they've all the settings done right for good battery life on the X. Anyway, that should do it for the disassembly. That's what it looks like inside. Overall, I've got to say it's very, very similar to the Legend. It does look like a redesign in that everything is a bit different. Like it's not the same case. It has been redone. General setup is the same flip top. Very similar. They probably reused a few components here and there, or just modified them slightly for this design, which is like, it's not a bad thing because it's solid. They've been good. Mainly if they've improved QC, then it'll be a great mod. It's well sealed. The board looks good. The monitoring cable is a little bit shorter, which is nice. Doesn't go right through the body. The screen looks well mounted. It's right flat against the metal case there. Fairly thick plastic, pretty strong, as I've proven. I think pretty good. I'm still not entirely convinced about this top assembly. It's very fiddly. What I might do is actually pull apart the top plate out of the Legend, because it's pretty much exactly the same as the X, and just have a look at all the springs and stuff, connections and wires, and how they've soldered it and put it together on this one. Okay, so I think that just about does it. Well done, anyone who lasted so long. Thanks for listening, and hope it was interesting. See what's inside your device. Cool. And check this out. Back together. And screen still works. Nice.